Hello students, this is a brief intro video about myself for my Civics and AP US History students, but I'm also going to put it on my YouTube page as well. The reason I want to put this on my YouTube page is because I took a different path to becoming a teacher than I think most people did. And I had a lot of interesting experiences and opportunities throughout my life that I hope can inspire you to also think outside of the box when it comes to, your life outside of high school and after high school and some of those adventures and opportunities that you can have. I grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and actually I went to high school at the same place I teach, Appleton East. To be honest, I did not like school, and I was not a good student, but I survived and graduated in 2000. I remember saying to myself after graduating that I would never set foot in a school again. I went to work in a factory that made corrugated paper. It's kind of like cardboard, but only one flat side. It is used on bulletin boards and advertisements. The money was good, but the job was incredibly boring. After about 5 or 6 months of working at the factory, I started to think about my future and what type of life I would lead if I stayed in this type of work. I also wondered what my potential might be. So I thought, what if I went to college, but unlike in high school, what if I really tried? Could I do it and graduate, and then also open up a ton of doors and opportunities for me for the rest of my life? So after a year of working in the factory, I quit and applied for college. But because of my poor high school performance, I could not get into a 4-year university. So I started out at a 2-year community college called UW-Fox Valley. I also made some other changes as well. I stopped hanging out with some bad influences and started working out. I definitely had my doubts that I could do well in college, but I just told myself to try my best and see what happens. I took a full load of courses, including a college math class, a US history class, and a business class. Because first I was thinking about a degree in business administration. I tried hard, made some good friends, and when my grades came back, I could not believe they were all A's and B's. I had made the honor roll. I was really happy, but also thought it might have been a fluke. So second semester came around, and things kept looking up. I even joined the tennis team and had a good amount of success on it. When my grades came back, again, I was astonished. They were even better than my first semester. I finished my 2 years there and received an associate's and even a small scholarship. By that point, I had switched my major from business to history and education, as I had always had a love for that subject. And the reason for education was mostly inspired by my college professors. In my own experience, many of my high school teachers did not seem to be really passionate about their subjects. But the college professors I had seemed to have great enthusiasm and passion for their subjects, and because of that, I was really engaged in their classes. I felt that I could bring my passion and love of learning history to the high school classroom and make it a much more engaging and enjoyable experience for students, much more than I had when I was in high school. I went on to complete my degree in social sciences, history, and secondary education from UW-Oshkosh. However, I did not get right into teaching. While in college, I spent one summer working in Yellowstone National Park, not as a ranger or anything to do with nature, but as a waiter in a lodge. It was great though. I worked about 25 to 30 hours a week, was given a dorm room, and I did a lot of hiking and backpacking around Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. I also got really into mountaineering, which led to a lifelong passion in that activity. I was able to meet and become friends with people from all over the United States and world, as many young people in their 20s worked there seasonally from all over. Some of them led interesting and different lives, as they just did seasonal jobs for half of the year and then traveled the other half. And that really caught my interest. So after college, I went to work at Glacier National Park at Many Glacier Hotel, which I stayed at until the very end of the season. I saw so much there, and it was my favorite place in the whole world. The colors of the lakes, forests, and mountains are surreal. When I left there in late October, I went back to Wisconsin. Being in the middle of the school year, there was no chance of finding a full-time teaching job. I cannot remember why, but I was at my old college, UW-Oshkosh, getting some documents of my credentials, and I had a random conversation with someone working there who told me about teaching in international schools in other countries, and there were job fairs for that. I did some research and found a job fair in Iowa that had hundreds of schools from many countries. It would be for several months until the job fair, so in the meantime, I went to Minneapolis to live with my cousin and substitute teach in the Minneapolis Public School District, which was quite an eye-opening experience, far different than what I was used to in Appleton, Wisconsin. I also worked in the evening at the Rainforest Cafe in the Mall of America. That made for really long days. When the job fair came around in February, I focused on schools in Latin America or Asia, as I had the most interest in those places. After a crazy whirlwind weekend of interviews, I secured a job teaching middle school social studies in Guatemala at a school called Colegio Interamericano. The job would not start until August, so I had 7 months to do what I wanted. I stayed in Minneapolis for another month, but secured a job in Yosemite National Park in California to start in June. The job was mostly a means for me to get a cabin in the park because the company provided one. By this point, I had gotten really into technical rock climbing with ropes, and Yosemite is the mecca for rock climbing. I left Minneapolis in early April and spent the next 2 months hiking, climbing, and visiting friends on my way to California, living out of my car. Once in Yosemite, I worked very little, giving most of my shifts away as I climbed as much as possible for 2 months. Then I flew out to Guatemala. My 2 years in Guatemala were amazing. I have a deep love for that country. It was also my first experience full-time teaching. My students were great, and I learned a lot in those 2 years of teaching. They follow the normal American school year, so when I had time off in the summer and on breaks, I traveled around Latin America. I backpacked through many countries, including Mexico, Belize, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, and of course, all over Guatemala, and went back to my favorite spot, Lake Atitlán, many times. Once my 2 year contract was up, I secured another 2 year contract in Thailand. And same thing as Guatemala, it was an awesome experience. My school and students were great, living in Bangkok was crazy, and I traveled around many places in Asia, including spending a month trekking around Kashmir, India, a month trekking around Mongolia, and backpacked in Burma, Laos, and Cambodia. But another special thing happened in Thailand. I met my wife, Pratsani, who goes by B. We started dating about 1 year into my stay in Thailand. When my contract came up in Thailand and I had to go home to the US, we decided to get married in Thailand. Once all the paperwork was complete, she followed me back to the US a few months later after I had arrived. Back in the US now, in my home state of Wisconsin, I taught for a year, less than full time, at North Fond du Lac High School. I also started my master's in educational technology at Marian University. My year in North Fond du Lac would prove to be my most difficult as a teacher, and I even entertained ideas of going back to Thailand to grow rubber trees. Now that would have been a career change. I left North Fond du Lac after 1 year to teach at University Lake School, which is close to Milwaukee. I had a good year there and finished my master's degree at Marian. I was all set to start my second year at University Lake School, but then an amazing opportunity came along to come back to Appleton, my hometown, and teach at my high school, Appleton East. The place that when I originally left, when I graduated way back in 2000, I had declared to myself that I would never step foot in another school again. So everything came full circle. I've been at East as a teacher for 8 years now, and I love teaching at Appleton East. It is great to be around and get to know students from the neighborhood I grew up in, and I try to be the best teacher I can possibly be. Also, I have bought a house in the school district and East Cluster, and my wife and I have 2 children, Luna, who is 6 and goes to Stephen Foster Elementary, and Liam, who is 3. All right, so to wrap up, I just want to take a second and not get real deep into like a life lesson here, but just to kind of talk about like why my life changed from a direction where it seemed kind of like a dead end after high school to one where I graduated from college and traveled the world and everything. And my parents are not rich at all. I had to pay for my college on my own. I come from, a lower middle class, working class background. And, the thing is like those opportunities are out there. And, I can kind of point to 2 different things. One is sometimes it was just me saying to myself, hey, just give this a shot, give it your best shot and see what happens. And then there were good results. And other times it was just some chance encounters, like specifically, the time when I was at my college and the lady, a random lady I met told me about international teaching job fairs. So, and that led me to, Guatemala and Thailand and seeing all those places and everything. Sometimes I think people get a little bit too complacent or they get a little worried about going down a different path because they don't know where it's going to lead them to. But when you take a look at a new opportunity or give something different that you've never done before a shot, sometimes that can lead down to a whole new like world and whole new opportunities and challenges and usually a lot of fun and also fulfillment in the end as well. Okay, that does it for my brief teacher intro video and life lesson at the end. I know we're starting off this year a little bit weird being fully online right away. And I know a lot of students don't really like the online learning experience. I know I'm going to try my best to, deliver the content and the skills and everything that you need for the course. And if you try your best as a student, I know we can make it work. And finally, I hope we get back to in-person learning or hybrid very soon.